Hey guys, welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast presented by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Steven. I am your host, and joining me today, as always, are Tyler and Alex. Alex is having a little fun at the Lakers' expense today, but definitely something to keep an eye on there in terms of his Sixers and how Joel Embiid is progressing. But Alex, how are you doing today, man?
That's irrelevant at this point because I remember Tyler telling me that LeBron would do some damage in the playoffs, and the only damage he's going to be doing is from Cancun.
Hey, some damage is more than zero, and he did a little bit of damage. I didn't say exponential amounts of damage, just
it's enough. The motion of the ocean for damage.
Well,
yeah, something like that.
Honestly, man, but it's going to be interesting to see how the Lakers retool here because the Lakers always retool. I can't imagine that Dennis Schroeder is back at this point. That guy was
turned down $84 million.
Wow, that guy was a scrub this week in the playoffs. So, and Kyle Kuzma just retired from basketball at this point. Gosh, that was bad. But yeah, we have a fun episode planned for you guys today. We're gonna do our quarterback draft. Each of us are gonna choose 5 quarterbacks today. We're gonna go through it 1 through 15. We're not gonna do a snake draft, so we're just gonna go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, etc. And it's gonna be a lot of fun. So we're trying to take into account, obviously, yes, the performance of these quarterbacks, but also the status of their contract, the status of their health, and essentially this is going to be like the who you would start a franchise with conversation. It is also worth mentioning at this point that Brandon Staley did have a live Q&A on Instagram. I don't know how much we want to talk about that for a second, but Alex or Tyler, I'll start with you. Did you have any major takeaways from Brandon Staley's Q&A?
Nope.
What about you, Alex?
Well, so I opened the Q&A and then I saw Matt Money Smith was hosting it, and then I exited the Q&A. So I didn't really have too many thoughts on that. I just, I was disappointed in the Eli Stove news this week where he tore his ACL and then had to get waived, which we found out a couple weeks ago, but kind of a shame that he just wouldn't be able to compete for a roster spot.
Yeah, OTA injuries are always the worst in general, but when it's an undrafted free agent, you just feel for that guy because, an ACL surgery at this point, that would put him back and healthy like next February, next March. And, at that point, he'd have to struggle to get onto a roster again. So just really unfortunate timing for him. In terms of Brandon Staley's Q&A, I think, a lot of the stuff we had already touched on, right? He touched on Kenneth Murray being an all-around player. He touched on the special teams battles. But his comment about leadership on the team, I think, is really interesting to start with because, he mentioned, they have a leadership council, and so they have several players on there who have kind of stepped up. But, the 3 names who have really been a constant from every coach, every player when they're asked about leadership have been Corey Linsley, Keenan Allen, and Derwin James. So I think those 3 players, it seems like they have, an early lead on the captaincy thing. I had to go check. Keenan Allen has never been voted a captain before. He's kind of taken over that role when some injuries have happened before, but he's never started the season as a captain. So I think that's, whether you think that's a big deal or not, I think that's a really cool thing for him to head into the later stages of his career and finally be recognized by his teammates. I hope that happens for him. And, Corey Linsley being a leader is fantastic news. I saw, Nate Tice and Jordan Reed were having this conversation, and Brandon Thorne, about the importance of the center position and how it helps young quarterbacks. And that's something that we've talked about quite a bit is just, the mental side of things that Corey Linsley can handle on a game-to-game, week-to-week basis. Really just takes pressure off of Justin Herbert. He doesn't have to do everything. And so we've kind of talked about the importance of Corey Linsley, but I love hearing the fact that he's been a constant in terms of leadership, constantly being mentioned as someone that's, taking on that role for the Chargers.
And the Chargers have a leadership void. Almost everybody who, was the captain last year is Pouncey. You have Ingram, Casey Hayward, Hunter Henry. I don't remember who the 5th captain was off the top of my head.
It was Tyrod.
But, Tyrod. So all 5 of them are gone. So you're going to have 5 brand new captains for the first time in a while. And I think that that's just going to be awesome to see which guys step up. I expect Keenan to be one of those, just based on the fact he's been here for so long. And now with Ingram's departure is the longest tenured Charger. So yeah, I'm really excited to just see which guys step up. Obviously, it would be cool if Herbert does it in his second year. Yeah. I don't totally expect that to happen, but I'm curious to see which of the 5 guys it'll be.
I can't imagine Herbert's not the captain of this team, or at least one of them. But the Keenan Allen one is interesting for me because it's not like, I mean, he wasn't voted it last year, and they had an opportunity to, and they went with Hunter Henry. And while the locker room clearly respects him and everyone respects him, he just wasn't voted the captain. I don't know why. I mean, he's excellent at what he does. One of the best players on the team. He's a veteran. So I don't know why he hasn't been. So that's the one I'm waiting to see, because I'm not quite sure if they'll pick him, but we'll see. I don't know if is it always 5 captains for the Chargers, or
I think
does it
so.
kind of fluctuate? Okay.
Last year, it's 5 that they start with, and it's 5 that get the captain patch. But I mean, Anthony Lynn always chose to have like one specific game captain, right? Because he would have one person go and do the toss. Like, sometimes it would even be Geno Smith for some reason. But in terms of like the players who get the C on their chest, it's generally been 5. It seems like in the past it's always been 2 offense, 2 defense, and 1 special teams. So I think Ty Long was actually a captain last year, if I'm not mistaken. So he's kind of the one holdover. But we'll have to see how that pans out. Frankly, there's a ton of new veterans on this team, and Brandon Staley also gave a shout out to Chris Harris, and that's somebody that I would not be surprised at all, because he's been in the league for so long. He's got great relationships with the coaching staff, and he's obviously been on the team for a year. So I think that could be another one as well. And I mean, who knows about Joey Bosa? Joey Bosa is obviously kind of a quiet, do your work kind of leader, which is totally fine. Everybody leads in their own different way. But I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see Joey Bosa get a C on his chest this year either.
Yeah, it would just be exciting for all the guys. And Chris Harris is probably going to be one of those captains. Just every time I hear him speak, like in a huddle or something, he brings that energy. Derwin's another guy that I wouldn't be surprised to kind of see that in the same respect. So a lot of good candidates.
Yeah. If I had to throw one more name in there, because I believe at one point in the season, he was talking about a previous season that he had with the Giants and how they were down, but they rallied back. And Linval Joseph gave a really passionate speech at one point. So as a veteran, defensive player, maybe he's obviously been vocal before, so maybe they give him a shot this year.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see what is in store for him this year, because he's apparently he's lost like 20 pounds. So who knows if that will be able to keep up. But
mini fridge.
Mini fridge. I think the other thing too, we kind of mentioned this, but Brandon Staley has talked about, and all the coaches have talked about, the wide receiver room and how they feel about the wide receiver room. But, unfortunately for KJ Hill, he's never really mentioned. So, obviously it is June, things can change. But it doesn't seem, it seems like KJ Hill is on the outside looking in terms of making this roster, which is just pretty unfortunate. As somebody that I thought was going to be a good, value pick for them coming out of last season. But, with the addition of Josh Palmer, it just seems like KJ Hill is on the outside looking in. So I just wanted to mention that really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of guys that, Joe Reed, we talked about him last episode, as a guy that might be on the outside looking in, but, they'll have training camp to prove it. And, if KJ Hill has one big preseason game, that might be enough to kind of swing the minds of the coaches and change the whole thing, right? We always talk about kind of those winners and losers of the preseason, and this year there actually will be a preseason as opposed to last year where KJ Hill and Joe Reed didn't have one. So, I think it's notable that he's not mentioning them, but also, even the most optimistic KJ Hill fan would have him as like wide receiver 5 or 6. So it's I don't know if it's, definitely not definitive, but probably not great. And he was also a 7th round pick last year. So if you cut him, you're not losing a lot in terms of like draft value versus we've talked about, the idea of maybe cutting Josh Kelly, which I don't think will happen this year. But they did spend a 3rd round pick. So you do want to see that pan out as opposed to a 7th round pick where you might go,
Yeah, I mean, Telesco is not shy from going to his 7th round pick. So hopefully he makes, I hope he has I mean, obviously he'll get a shot. I just don't think, like, even if Keenan Allen goes down, I'm not going to put KJ Hill in that role. I'd rather just change up my offense a little bit and throw Tyron Johnson out there or something instead. So best of luck to him. We're all, fans of his. Statistically, he looked great in college, as I believe Ohio State's leading yards receiver or catches receiver. So, great college career. Catches, yeah. So bummer it might not work out, but best of luck to him. We'll see. You get a preseason at least, so at least he gets a fair shake.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So, all right, let's get started with this quarterback draft. I'm really curious to see how this pans out. Really interested to see which one of us takes Justin Herbert and where he goes. But this is going to be a really fun conversation. I think, kind of valuing the quarterback position this way, taking into consideration their contracts. And some of these quarterbacks have just atrocious contracts. Like Kirk Cousins had like a $47 million cap hit next year, which I'm just like, what are we doing? So definitely really interesting to look at the quarterback contracts and stuff like that. So the order is as follows. Alex has the 1st pick. I wonder who he's going to take. Tyler has the 2nd. I have the 3rd pick, and then we'll keep going that way. We decided not to do a snake draft, just kind of keep it in the NFL draft following. So, Alex, we'll let you start. And who are you taking with the 1st overall pick here?
Not too much of a shocker here. I'm taking Patrick Mahomes with the 1st pick. He's still only 25. Will be 26 going into the season. Just one of the best, the best quarterback, I think, in the NFL right now. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers did win MVP last year, but, I feel like it might be unanimous if you ask all 32 GMs, hey, you can have one quarterback. It would be Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And, I know Chargers fans don't want to hear it, but, at some point there just has to be that respect. It's how I feel when people say Brady is the GOAT, and I roll my eyes. But, so at some point, the plays he makes with his arm, just insane throws and that people remember in the Super Bowl when his offensive line was crumbling around him. He's the best quarterback in the league. And I think that, that team goes as far as he does. Ultimately, he was 2nd in big time throws by a PFF last year. So, he's one of those guys that just, you can depend on him to himself. 2 things that I think are concerning. We do talk a little bit about his injuries. He has had a few with his knee and some other stuff. So, if we're talking about a 5 to 10 year, draft kind of period, that is a little bit concerning. And as much as he leads the league in those big time throws, he also is, I believe, top 3 turnover worthy plays, throwing interceptions, fumbles, all that kind of thing. But ultimately, all that aside, biggest threat in the NFL. And I just think you have to take him with the 1st pick.
I agree with that, and I'm glad that you went there. And a lot of Chargers fans have been like, kind of confused at how the Chiefs are able to, make all these free agent moves and sign a Joe Thuney. The answer is that Patrick Mahomes has a $7.4 million cap hit this year, which I think not a lot of people realize. And yes, he signed that monster contract, and he's signed until 2032. But it doesn't get like really bad in terms of like high-end contract numbers until like 2024, 2025. Like even next year, I think it's like a $22-23 million cap hit. So the Chiefs are in a very good cap situation, unfortunately for us, because Patrick Mahomes' contract actually gives them flexibility. And then by the time that it does get bad, in 4 or 5 years, like who knows where these quarterback contracts are going to be in that kind of situation. Lamar Jackson has an extension coming up. Josh Allen has an extension coming up. Kyler Murray will have an extension by then, and then talks will begin for Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow and that kind of class. So when he actually is making $40 million a year, that's going to be even a manageable contract then. So yeah, unfortunately, I think Patrick Mahomes absolutely number 1, and his contract is really not that bad.
No, it's really not. But I am glad you brought up those injuries as a concern, because I do think that is something. There's always just a little something every year, and I don't know how much that'll affect him moving forward, but it is something. Can I go to number 2?
Yeah, go for it.
Great. PFF Shove it. I am going Justin Herbert at number
Let's
2.
go.
Chargers fans, if you are listening, I want you to give me all the likes. Look, the reason that I was down, I mean, I had the most back end first round grade on this kid last year, but the reason I was mostly down on him, I think, is because I couldn't look ahead to the NFL and see what he could be. I only saw what he was. Now I can see what he is in the NFL. And while I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback by any means, I do think you can slide him somewhere in the top 10. It is undeniable that in an offense, so the teams that we're assuming here, we're assuming these are going to be, we're going to max out our quarterbacks, right? We're not just sticking him in the Houston Texans. You know, we're going to have some decent teams and decent players, a decent line. And what Herbert was able to do last year with a piss poor coaching staff, good offensive weapons, and a horrendous offensive line, to be so efficient and so great in a team with no scheme, no plan, horrendous special teams, and poor defense on many occasions, for him to rise to that occasion and perform as well as he did with all the circumstances. And every Chargers fan knows the story at this point. It's hard to deny that I think I would start a franchise with him. Now, obviously, we had a debate earlier about Herbert versus Lawrence, and at some point, I'm sure one of you is going to take Lawrence in the next couple of picks, perhaps. But I've seen the kid play. I've seen Herbert play. This guy's only going to be 23 this season. He's got a $68 million cap hit the next 3 years. I have zero worries about him, honestly. You know, the only thing I would worry about with some rookie quarterbacks is, you know, a high touchdown to interception ratio, or low, high.
Yeah, low.
Point is, he doesn't turn over the ball that much. So for a guy to have that kind of skill set, to come into the league and not turn the ball over and not even have, you know, high interceptable ball rate or whatever, and he's only just beginning, they're just going to unlock what he can do in the run game. I'm taking Justin Herbert. And again, I don't think he's the second best quarterback by any means, but he played phenomenal. He's going to be an MVP candidate this year, I think. And his contract's amazing. He's great. So the sky's the limit for this kid, truly. I was certainly, you know, rooting for the drafted quarterback this year and take Simmons or a tackle last year plan, which, hey, maybe that would have worked. Maybe the Chargers would have gotten Fields where they drafted this year. But, you know, of course, I wouldn't want Fields over Herbert at this point. So, yeah, I'm going with Herbert at number 2. Maybe that's a surprise. I don't know. But I just think the talent, the contract, the projection, everything matches up. And, yeah, so I'm going with him.
Tyler, maintaining my heel status on this show by going Justin Herbert at 2 after I go Patrick Mahomes. Thanks, buddy.
No, I think that's a very interesting, you know, decision. I can't be surprised one of us took him in the top 5. I think that's kind of frankly, you know, talking about building the as like having a rookie contract is just so valuable, and you have a player who such a high ceiling, you know, it's such a huge advantage. And so I think Justin has such a high ceiling, and to practice it. So this is good. 3. You know, kind of choosing between, you know, Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers. A tough spot, and I was picking a player here, but yeah, I'm gonna go in here with number 3 overall pick. And the scenario, I'm a little concerned about how he will age once his athleticism declines a little. It is a little worrisome, you know, 40, 20, 23. But you know, talent outweighs, you know, the contract risk and the risk of the athleticism. And you know, people kind of forget, and you know, the first 10 games, he was playing like the MVP of the league. And then, you know, Chris Carson got hurt, was bad. In some kind of scenario, I'm kind of thinking that I would be able to Russell Wilson and maximize his ability, maximize the offensive linemen around him, get him out of Pete Carroll's atrocious offensive history, get him into a system that would, you know, more suit his talents. So Russell Wilson at number 3 is my pick here.
Yeah, I think Arjun had a graphic up about EPA in the run and in the pass, and the Seahawks were like in the bottom quadrant for like one of the lowest EPAs in run and the pass. So I mean, obviously Wilson has elevated that, but still to be that poor really reflects that coaching staff. So yeah, I certainly was looking at him with my next pick. Obviously, I won't anymore. But yeah, great player. I'm happy to have him out of this situation onto our imaginary great team.
Yeah, so my next pick, I'm going to, this actually would have been my pick if Deshaun Watson. I know there is a lot of questions just about his status for 2021 in general. There's a lot of questions about that for him, but to be honest, like he's so good, and he's been on this horrendous Texans team for a long time. I mean, not a long time since he was drafted, but it certainly felt that way with how the Texans have played. And ultimately, they traded his top 5 receiver, but he was still kind of amazing in 2020. He obviously 12, but everything was pretty great for him. Just doesn't make many turnover plays. His turnover plays actually came down from 27 to 14, and his big time plays actually went up to 42 in terms of big time throws. So he's just great. And if we're talking about this year, that might be a concern because maybe he'll get suspended 8 games by the NFL. But long-term view, if we're talking the next 5 to 10 years, other than Patrick Mahomes, there's no other quarterback that I would rather have than Deshaun Watson. That does not mean that I want to reignite the let's trade Herbert for Watson thing that ESPN did this year. But, to me, he's only 25, still about the same age as Patrick Mahomes, going to be 26 going into the season. That contract, is, fine. He's making $40 million a year, but he's deserving of that. And I think you can still build the team around him compared to the contracts that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are going to get coming up here, like Stephen mentioned. So to me, Deshaun Watson, to me, starting, I think he's the second quarterback on the board. And to me, he's the 4th pick.
Yeah, wow. I think Watson is absolutely worth the pick. He's definitely, super talented. He only has a $15 million cap hit this year, courtesy of the 5th-year option. So the contract itself isn't crazy, similar to Mahomes. But for me, the difference is obviously like the legal situation. I just don't know how it's going to pan out. Maybe he's suspended for 8 games. Maybe he's suspended for the whole season. Maybe it was just a little too much up in the air for me, which is why I went with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, no, good call. I did not expect this player to still be here, so why not? I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers. If I go youth movement with the first pick, I got to go with this guy at the next one. Granted, he is 37 or 38 right now, and the contract it's not bad. Like, it's only $35 million a year on average, which is expensive, but it's not, Kirk Cousins 40-something, Matt Ryan 40-something, or whatever the hell those contracts are. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers. 48 touchdowns, 5 interceptions is really hard to kind of deny how excellent that is. And to get the reigning MVP here at pick 5, I think I'm cool with that. So I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers. And whereas Herbert is all about projection, I could certainly win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers right now. And I, as the GM and owner and coach of this team, will ensure that we do not take a glorified fullback or tight end, and we will give him white.
Or trade up for a quarterback when you have no need to do so.
Holy hell.
I think Aaron Rodgers at 5, that's absolutely a good call. I think, he showed last season that he is still playing at an elite level. And like you said, in this kind of situation, you can get him some more receiver help, get him maybe a better defense. I obviously would kind of try and keep him in the same kind of offensive system, but I absolutely think that's the right call. So number 6 for me, I'm sure some people will be a little surprised at this pick, but I'm actually going to go with Lamar Jackson. I consider maybe going with Josh Allen here, but I think, taking Lamar Jackson, who's won 80% of his starts in the NFL. I know winning record isn't like everything, but he simply gets the job done at an elite level. And, I forget who was on the Pat McAfee show when they were talking about this, but when you're building an NFL franchise, you want to have players who give you a true numbers advantage. And I think what Lamar Jackson does as a runner is by far the biggest advantage in terms of a rushing attack that any player in the league has, because it gives you essentially 2 elite running backs in the field at all times. And he only makes $2 million this season. So I'm only going to pay a reigning MVP $2 million for 2 more years, and then his 5th-year option will kick in, and then I'll have to do the extension. So, financially, this makes a ton of sense. And again, in this kind of situation, I would take him out of Greg Roman's atrocious passing offense and hope to build, a true passing attack around him. I do like what the Ravens have done in terms of the receivers, but I would definitely want to get an offensive coordinator upgraded there. So I'm going to go Lamar Jackson, a former MVP, with the 6th overall pick.
Yeah. Okay. I'm definitely a little bit surprised. Greg Roman is currently, or was, Tyrod Taylor's best offensive coordinator. So keep that in mind, considering his entire career. But yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson, you're right. There are a few guys who have that second, dynamic to their game. And 1,005 rushing yards last year is ridiculous. Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't realize he had topped 1,000. I don't know why I didn't know that, but looking at it, it's pretty fantastic. And there's only a couple of guys that could really, say that they're even close to that. So yeah, you're definitely banking on potential there. I know, right. I'm sure this season Lamar Jackson is going to take that next step. If he doesn't, then you definitely have concerns. But yeah, no, I think he can take that next step. So that's a good call. I'm a little surprised, but I like it.
So I've been pigeonholed into taking Josh Allen, who I hated for the longest time. I hated watching him. But, his improvement was undeniable. Year to year from 2019 to 2020, he went up 11 points and complete, 1,500 more yards. Just the quarterback that we saw on the field, I think his first game was against the Chargers, right? That was, just a completely different quarterback who was, kind of scared out of his mind, whether it was, passing or, trying to kind of make athletic plays. Sometimes that would take precedent over his throwing, but he's just improved so much as a quarterback that, like I just said, it's undeniable. And like Lamar Jackson, since he was in the same draft, more years on that contract. So That's going to be great for that rookie deal perspective that we've been talking about. Big arm, he sort of led the kind of big arm revolution where GMs started kind of drafting quarterbacks that had these raw physical skill sets over, maybe the perfected products. And so to me, Josh Allen, I think still has some room to improve. And, he finished with, I think, almost like 80% adjusted completion rate last year, considering draft. But, the one thing that is concerning with him is that he does do a lot of turnover-worthy plays. Yeah. Carson Wentz was first in turnover-worthy plays. Josh Allen was second.
Oh, wow.
And so that's a concern going forward. But, despite that, I just think you have to kind of take him here. And, you can probably figure out his interceptions and his fumbles. But, in terms of figuring out his interceptions, he had a 3.7 touchdown interception ratio and told me to shove it up my ass. So
yeah, all of us.
I think you have to take Josh Allen here. Would have taken Lamar Jackson if Steven had went Josh Allen. But yeah, that's my third quarterback.
Interesting. Yeah, Josh Allen was an interesting one because I had to watch a lot of him for Brian Daboll. Of course, every time I watch someone from Buffalo, they end up not making the team or getting stabbed in the lungs. So I'm really sick of watching Buffalo film. I probably watch more Buffalo shit than I have Chargers at this point. But I was actually surprised based on his quarterback rating in some games. I was surprised to then go watch the play because I actually didn't really think the play matched those ratings. And maybe I missed something, but it felt like Daboll elevated him a lot more, and which is fine. Like that is his job. And I do like Stephon Diggs bailed him out of a lot of plays. Yeah. So I do think there's a lot of room for improvement. Like you said, the turnovers are certainly an issue, but it's very hard to deny the leap he took forward. And, he's only going to get better, I think. And he's young. He has that contract. So, no reason to think that he can't continue to get better. So that's a good call. Okay, now we're getting into do I go with? It's like we're teetering on the list of people that I don't really like that much, but okay, so this is a tough one for me because I'm certainly partial to someone like Kyler Murray because he took me all the way to second to dead last in my fantasy league last season. So, but he was like the number one player in fantasy, so like I really appreciate that. On the other hand, I could go Trevor Lawrence just because it's Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
So you would be banking on the kid who probably has the higher ceiling in Trevor Lawrence versus the guy who's been in the league and does put up good numbers. Because we are taking these guys out of their teams and putting on them on imaginary teams, I still think I will go Trevor Lawrence on this one. If he were stuck in Jacksonville, I would go with Kyler Murray just because of all the talent that he has. But Trevor Lawrence, having the floor that he does, I don't know why I'm going with younger quarterbacks, except for Rodgers. But I don't know. Like Kyler Murray was banged up last season, and there was a point where he did get injured and his fantasy points declined. Didn't watch much of his tape, but boy, those fantasy points declined after his injury. And so I'm a little bit worried about those things. Can he hold up long-term? Whereas I think Trevor Lawrence can. And, Trevor Lawrence, as much as I love Herbert, Trevor Lawrence was a much, much better prospect than Herbert.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this take might not age well because Lawrence goes to Jacksonville. And, Lawrence maybe just doesn't do as well because he's in Jacksonville. We'll see. I don't know. But in our imaginary scenarios, considering Murray, I'm not really sure about his injuries. And I still think Lawrence does have the higher ceiling. I'm going to go with him. There are certainly other guys that I'm really considering with the next pick that I like. But for right now, I was kind of picking between those two because I wanted to go younger. So I'm going to go with Lawrence on that one.
I think that's a good call. And, in building a franchise, like you want to take the younger players, you want to get the cheaper players and hopefully get elite players where you can with those kind of contracts. So it makes a lot of sense. I know that, Chargers fans, have endeared themselves to Justin Herbert, and I have as well. But, given the chance, I probably would choose Trevor Lawrence over Justin Herbert at this point. I think Trevor Lawrence is, in terms of prospects, I mean, obviously. But Trevor Lawrence, I think, is one of the best prospects we've seen in quite some time at the quarterback position. So definitely not surprised that he went in the top 10. All right, so here at number 9, I've got an interesting scenario going on in my head because Tom Brady only makes $10 million this year, and he only makes $20 million, $21 million next year. Obviously, I think that he's not going to play in terms of building a franchise and long term. I don't think that Tom Brady is going to be around long term. But we were kind of talking beforehand, his numbers, his statistics across the board last year were still at an elite level. I think, his interceptions were a little up. That's the Bruce Arians effect. But obviously he won the Super Bowl. He was Super Bowl MVP. He's still playing at a high level. So I'm kind of talking myself into him. But at the same time, I went and did a big board and I had Dak Prescott quite a few spots higher than Tom Brady. But Dak Prescott's contract, his injury, I'm going Tom Brady here, man. I don't know. I talked myself into it, kind of it. But he's still playing at an elite level as we've seen. Yeah. And his contract, I think he's got the 15th highest cap hit this year. Granted, that was a bit of a restructure, but I think he's in a great spot. In terms of maximizing his own ability, I would love to get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers an actual running back. But if I could take Tom Brady and put him in a very similar situation in this hypothetical scenario, I think that in the next 2 or 3 years, I could still have an elite quarterback and potentially win a couple of Super Bowls. So as much as I hate taking Brady in the top 10, I think this is the only scenario. I think if Dak Prescott had a bit of a cheaper contract, that's where I would go. But I'm going Tom Brady.
Yeah. I think you can make the argument for best perspective, and he'll probably play 10 more years and just continue to annoy us all. That's just the Tom Brady effect. Tyler, I almost said Kyler. Tyler mentioned that we were talking about taking these guys out of their systems, and I feel that way about Kyler Murray. I do not like watching Cliff Kingsbury and that whole offensive situation. It was hard to watch whenever I watched Kyler Murray last year So if you get Kyler Murray, a coach who's a ton at Texas Tech, and then fall into the NFL, I think that, he could be, a lot better if you get a good offensive mind. But that being said, he still did throw for 4,000 yards, 67% completion percentage, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. So he did not have a shabby year himself. Has a huge arm, as we saw in the Hail Murray play at the end of that Bills game. His arm talent is up there, in my opinion, with Justin Herbert, with Josh Allen, and a lot of these guys that we talk about. So to me, I think Kyler Murray has to be the next quarterback with Josh Allen, but a year later, because he was drafted in 2019, has that rookie contract. And to me, he's my pick here. I think that if you get him some more weapons, I know he does have DeAndre Hopkins, but aside from that, he doesn't really have too many elite tier options. I mean, I guess he has Larry Fitzgerald, but it's kind of thin there, a tight end, a little bit at running back, and some other positions. So I would probably go with Kyler Murray here, where he does need to get better, is not so mean, but intermediate. He ranked 24th among quarterbacks, so between 10 and 19 yards. So I think he can still improve in those areas, but he's a dual threat monster. And to me, he's up there with a lot of these young rookie quarterbacks on a cheap deal that we're talking about. So Kyler Murray is my fourth quarterback.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good call. Aside from Lamar Jackson, he is the other guy who we can call that true, legit dual threat. 822 yards, 11 touchdowns. So yeah, that's not a bad call there. I like that for sure. I will be keeping him in fantasy this season because the Josh Jacobs train has gone like this.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I mean, 2 more years, $20 million for those 2 years plus his fifth option. I think Kyler Murray is a really good choice there. As far as Tom Brady goes, while my dad is a Raiders fan, and while I did not bring, I didn't carry the jerseys, the colors, the passion for that team with me. What I did carry with me and will carry with me for the rest of my life is the fact that I fucking hate Tom Brady. So I didn't even like he's on my list. He's here listed, but he's just kind of like randomly somewhere on my list. And I wasn't going to pick him no matter what. If it was the last pick, if we could go for another 10 picks, I'd be picking I'd be honestly Jordan Love, anybody else. Like I just wouldn't pick Tom Brady. Gosh. I can't do it. I respect what he does for sure. Like I have no problem with like winning quarterback guys who are great at winning. I mean, shit, LeBron's on the Lakers, and I rooted for LeBron everywhere, and he's considered one of like the current GOATs and stuff. And that's all good. It's just Tom Brady himself, I fucking hate. I hate him. The Tuck rule sucks. I hate that. Whatever. And honestly, I hate what I blame him for all the things that Philip Rivers wasn't able to do in his career, even though it has nothing to do with him. Whatever.
I love that, man. Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, we lost 3 of our Patreon supporters, but whatever. Okay, so yeah, at this point, it's like I like my next option. I definitely know who I'm going to take. Of course, I could consider some youth movements here. But I think I'm kind of not stuck because I feel good about this. I'm going with Matthew Stafford, a guy that we talk about taking guys out of piss poor situations and putting them somewhere better. Obviously, we don't know where Stafford would go in our imaginary scenarios, but he wouldn't be in Detroit. And while he has had good weapons, I think pretty much everything else has been subpar around him. So I do think he has the talent. I do think at only 33 this year, his cap hit isn't even that much. I think $21.5 million per year on average is his cap hit. So taking a guy who's on the younger-ish side of those 30s, a lower cap hit, I do think he has potential. I think he's going to do great with the Rams this season, and I think in our imaginary teams he'll do well as well. So I'm going with Stafford there as my QB4.
Yeah, Stafford, I mean, he's only got $20 million cap hit this year, $23 million cap hit next year. So,
yeah,
contractually, that's fine value. I personally, I think he's going to be great for the Rams in the short term. I'm a little concerned about all the injuries and how they've stacked up. So, but again, a similar conversation to Brady. I think, you get him in the right situation, which it seems like he is with the Rams. I think you could get, a couple years of elite play, a couple years of game management play, and then hopefully get a Super Bowl too. I can't believe that Dak Prescott is still on the board here.
I forgot to write him down.
Oh gosh.
So not because like a Brady hatred. I literally just forgot to write him down, which I'm sure pleases our resident Eagles fan. But yeah, I completely forgot to write him down. My bad.
Oh my gosh, that's okay. I'll gladly take Dak Prescott as my fourth quarterback here. The contract, he's got the second highest contract, at least in yearly average this year, behind Patrick Mahomes. He's got a $22 million cap hit this year. And then it kind of averages out between like 39, 40 until 2025. So again, right now it seems kind of bad, but in terms of his statistical numbers, right, he averaged 371 yards per game last year, had an adjusted completion percentage of 78. His average depth of target is really solid. His touchdown percentage wasn't great this year, but his interception percentage has maintained kind of around between that 1.5, 1.8. So not a whole lot of turnovers. And he's continued to develop as a passer every single year, which is absolutely something that matters to me.
Yeah.
And while he's not dual threat in terms of, like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, he can give you enough on the ground where I think you can have some wiggle room there. And again, in this kind of situation, I would try to keep some kind of the talent around him, right? Because in terms of receiver talent, you can't get much better than Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup as your three main receivers. Would absolutely want to get him, a better running game, better tight end. But I think he's improved enough as a passer over the last few years that I think I was considering him taking him when I took Brady. So, getting him 3 picks later as my fourth quarterback to me is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I would have taken Dak had, the Kyler Murray not been available. If Tyler had taken Kyler Murray, then I probably would have taken Dak last round. But we do talk about the but anytime you can take a rookie up-and-comer over, $40 million, I feel like you do kind of do it. And in that same vein, I'm going to take Justin Fields with my last pick.
Damn you.
Yeah. Pretty sure that was everyone's fifth pick.
Yeah, he just makes too much sense, as much flack as he gets for not going past the first read. And also, the other thing that people criticize him on is depth downfield. He was the best quarterback in college football past 10 yards last year in terms of accuracy. So, there's no concerns there. The concern would be Matt Nagy and Chicago ruining another quarterback.
Yes.
But in this hypothetical where we're taking them, to a different team, that's kind of where I think you take Justin Fields and, you make him into what the quarterback he's supposed to be. Like Josh Allen, there are a lot of Wentzian tendencies in his game, which is to say, a lot of those fumbles, interceptions, do that. And that was evident in the game that everyone who's anti-Justin Fields talks about in the Indiana game. He had a lot of those tendencies. Yeah. But this is also the guy who, smacked up the entire Clemson defense for 6 touchdowns. So, if we're talking about 1 game sample sizes, that's a hell of a sample size. So yeah, to me, Justin Fields, is Chicago's savior that they're hoping for. And I think that he just has to be in this list of like 15 quarterbacks along with Trevor Lawrence is a lot of promise going forward.
So I think I know who Steven would take if I passed on him. I think I know who it would be. So I'm going to go. So if we did a poll of all 5 quarterbacks, that we took and who had the best one, the best set of 5, I think they'd go through my first 4 and be like, all right, that's a pretty good one. I am going to stick with my guns because I hate to flip on somebody after 1 year. I will go with Tua Tagovailoa here. And I know that's a huge surprise, and I'm sure like my stock of my quarterbacks just died. If Fields were there, I would have taken Fields, but obviously he's not there. And I would have taken another quarterback probably, but I'm going to let Steven take that other quarterback that I think he's going to take. Derek Carr, not really. The rest of the list like really isn't that great in terms of age, contract. Like, could I win more with like Matt Ryan this year than Tua? Probably, but 3 years, $119 million. Kirk Cousins, no. Jared Goff, no. Ben Roethlisberger, no. Bridgewater, like that's cheap, and he's young-ish. Oh, by the way, I just don't like Baker Mayfield. Ever since he was like, "I don't need to read the Chargers playbook; they're not going to pick me," and he got absolutely boat raced by the Chargers in the game that he played against them. So I just like don't like Baker Mayfield. So I'm not picking him there. So I understand that like there are some better options today, but
yeah,
I'm going with Tua, man. And I know that's like it's like a dirty word, and apparently Tua works out and Herbert doesn't, and there's kind of a Dolphins and Bengals and Chargers fans clash going on, but.
Yeah,
you have to consider that he is on a rookie deal. So that's obviously the one big thing. Number two, I do think he has some potential as well still. Again, I took Herbert first and Tua's here in the back end. And so it's not like I like them equally. But, if everyone can give Herbert now granted, it's very different because Herbert, had no time to prepare and played the Chiefs and went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. Tua went on that field and put up 340 yards and 3 touchdowns toe-to-toe against Patrick Mahomes. And I think he played really well against the Cardinals as well. If you watch that game, another toe-to-toe with Kyler Murray sort of game. He closed out the season okay against the Bills with 300-something yards. I don't have the stats in front of me. So there are moments there. And, for as much shit as we rightfully give the Chargers offensive coaching staff, Herbert at least had the weapons. And Tua really had neither the coaching staff nor the weapons last season. Right. And really, it really reflected in when they played the Broncos, where his line was giving him zero help. They had they were on like Salvo and Ahmed at that point. I don't even know if Parker was playing, and I believe their main deep threat was hurt. And they just had Tua doing drop back, hit, drop back, hit. They were doing nothing to help him. No weapons. No, I mean, I don't know what they could have done, but I certainly feel like they could have done more. And granted, Tua was missing reads on those plays, and that's fine. He's a rookie, but I just think that not only did they have no weapons for him, they didn't really build around him. They had no plan for him. They're just like, we're winning with Fitzpatrick. After the bye, we're sticking to it. And then he gets to play, Aaron Donald and the Rams. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, what is the plan for him? There was no plan. So I'm banking on the fact that I loved him coming out of college. He was my quarterback one. And like, I think there's something there in this situation where we assume that we're going to put these players in good situations. I think Tua, I'm going to bank on him. We'll see how this ages. I'm doubling down on Tua after having him as my QB1 and getting burned for that. I'm taking him here as my QB5 here in the NFL over some of the other guys, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with it. It's just my heart and my gut feels that way. I didn't take Tyrod Taylor. Obviously, I wouldn't have taken him for another few. But that's neither here nor there. Steven, go ahead and tell me why you're taking Ryan Tannehill.
I'm actually not going to take Ryan Tannehill. So
really? Okay. Yeah. Wow.
I think the NFL has really gotten to a point where you need a dude. Like, you need someone that you can count on, having an elite ceiling at the quarterback position. So I 100% would have taken Justin Fields here if he were still on the board. I probably wouldn't have taken Tua, but I get it. He was my QB1 as well. And while I think I could, kind of formulate a better situation for him than what the Dolphins have done. But yeah, I'm not going to go Ryan Tannehill here. I think Tannehill is a fine quarterback. I think he is clearly the best of that group of game manager quarterbacks, and I do think he is a little underrated. But in this situation where I'm hoping to get an elite talent, I'm hoping to get, contractual value, I'm going to go with Trey Lance. I'm going to go with...
hoping it's Zach Wilson.
No, we got to get into like pick 30s for me to take Zach Wilson.
Oh, no.
But I'm going to take Trey Lance because I understand the concerns. I understand the concerns of, he only played 1 year in college and all this stuff. But I think he has such a high ceiling. I think he's got a rocket arm, and I think his ball placement needs improving. But I think he can, we saw Josh Allen improve as a passer. We've seen Lamar Jackson improve as a passer. And I don't know what it is, because outside of Tom Brady, all of my quarterbacks are runners. So Trey Lance, he had 1,000 yards rushing in college, and that's something that I think really gives you a huge advantage. And I do think he has a top-tier ceiling. I considered going with Joe Burrow here, but I think, his advanced numbers last year really weren't all that great. His average depth of target was only like 6 yards. His deep His deep pass completion percentage was like 25th in the league or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So I just think Burrow is a little more limited with what you can do. Love his attitude, love his moxie, love his toughness. But I think he is ultimately going to become one of the, like someone like Ryan Tannehill, who's more of an elite game manager than anything else. So I want that high ceiling. I want that rookie contract. I want that mobility and flexibility from the rushing game that Trey Lance would give me. So I'm going to end our quarterback draft by taking Trey Lance.
I like it. That's a good call. That's a really good one there. Wow, I can't believe we didn't pick Joe Burrow. I forgot about Burrow too. I don't think I would have taken him anyway, but like, yeah, I forgot about Burrow. So, whoopsie.
It's all good. So let's recap each of our picks. Alex, who are your 5 quarterbacks? And then Tyler, and then I will finish the recap.
Yeah, so I had Patrick Mahomes as my first, Deshaun Watson second, Josh Allen third, and fifth. I rounded out with the guy that you guys wanted, Justin Fields.
Who was your fourth?
Wait,
Kyler,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah, cool. I went Justin Herbert, rightfully so. Then I went with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Then
Trevor Lawrence. Then Matthew Stafford, and then close it out with everyone's gonna fucking kill me. Tua Tagovailoa.
I can't wait to hear the feedback on this one. So I took Russell Wilson first. I took Lamar Jackson second. Took Tom Brady third, and then I took Dak Prescott and Trey Lance. So, guys, let us know what you think in the comments and the tweets, wherever you want to give us some feedback. I think this is a super interesting conversation. Obviously, Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill didn't get drafted. Baker Mayfield didn't get drafted. Neither Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins. So it's pretty clear, what kind of quarterbacks we, the three of us, value. And I think that's on par with the league. I think you want to get some quarterbacks who have that top tier talent, that top tier ceiling, and hopefully get some cap flexibility. So, Alex, any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show? And then Tyler after that.
Yeah, I think that if we're going to do the poll eventually on who got the 5 best guys, so Tyler would have won with about 60% of that poll if he just had not taken Tua, because he took Justin Herbert, so he's going to win the poll. But now I think he'll be around 50% in the poll just because he took Tua. So unfortunate break for him. But yeah, no, guys that we all took today. Definitely an interesting group of quarterbacks, just going for the future and, just trying to kind of roll the dice. I don't expect every quarterback to pan out this year that we took. Someone like Justin Fields could struggle because of his situation, or someone like Trevor Lawrence. But yeah, no, I think we have a good group of guys heading into the future until we look back 2 years from now and think, what the fuck were we doing?
Well, as long as I don't have to look back and say, what the fuck were we doing when I took Herbert first overall, then I'm okay. If I'm right about my Tua thing, that's awesome. Yeah, let me know, guys. Forget it. Don't let me know. Just don't. I mean, look, the dislike button still gives us engagement, so that's cool too. I think I still have the reigning most dislikes on one video with the Juju Smith-Schuster video I did once. So if you want to throw some more in there, that's completely fine. Whatever. I'm excited for these quarterbacks to see where they do and how they do in their imaginary situations. I fuck Tom Brady, so there we go.
There you go. You started off bad with a Tua, then you wrap it up with a fuck Tom Brady chant. I like it. I dig it.
Yeah, get my points back.
There you go. Hey man, at least you didn't take Tom Brady. So maybe I'll end up with the most dislikes because I took Tom Brady. But you know what? I try and be as partial as I can, and I don't hate Tom Brady as much as everyone else does. So, but that's cool with me. All right, that's going to do it for us today, guys. Make sure and leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to the audio version of this podcast. Make sure and stay tuned for our next few episodes. We're going to be doing this kind of thing across the board for different kind of positions like offensive line, front sevens, secondary, receiving groups. So it's going to be a lot of fun covering the next few weeks. And then, of course, we'll have training camp starting at the end of July, which we cannot wait for. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.